How you doing? It's Benjamin Johnson, and we're going to talk about Jamestown. Jamestown was the first and permanent English settlement established in 1607. Founding of Jamestown is pretty simple. You had people that was part of the Joint Stock Company, which is a business owned by many people, Virginia Company of London. And basically what you got to realize is this, and I have it in lime green at the bottom. It says, please note, when we talk about Virginia at this time, we're not just talking about the Virginia that you know today. It was anything north of Florida, which was owned by Spain at the time, and it was also south of Canada along the Atlantic coast. So Virginia was a pretty large area, not the Virginia that you know of today. Now, why was this significant? Because it was the first successful colony in 1607, and it saw success to many factors, including the popularity of the crops like tobacco. Remember, we saw a question yesterday, and it said tobacco was the reason why Jamestown existed and survived. Now, what was the main goal? The main goal was pretty simple. It was to find gold and other natural resources. And if you look at the map, I put a map at the bottom, you have where it is now the James River. But Jamestown actually was right at the mouth of the James River. You have the Chesapeake Bay and you got the Atlantic Ocean. So that's pretty much where they had landed. And they actually set up shop. Now, in this area here, we had challenges. Some challenges, well, if you think about it, whenever these people came over, it was pretty simple. They had 144 men that sailed from England. 39 of them died during the journey. Okay, they settled where the James River is today. Now, the question is this: why did they choose to settle next to a river? A lot of your ancient civilizations, all the way up to colonies and things, they like to settle beside rivers. Well, the reason why they settle by rivers is easy to bring people and supplies inland. So you could come from the Chesapeake Bay area, from the Atlantic Ocean into the river. Okay? And now, another reason is, if you look inland, it was hidden from Spanish ships sailing the Atlantic. So it was kind of like a safe haven. You could still get things in, and you didn't have to worry about being attacked, because at this point in time in history, the Spanish Armada was at full tilt. And the Spanish Armada was pretty, I guess what you want to call it, it was dangerous. It was like a secret weapon for Spain. Next. One thing you have to look at here. Now, some more challenges that the colonists had to face was simple. The colonists struggled, and why they struggled? Because they settled in swampland. There's another question yesterday about why did the colonies either not survive or some challenges they faced? Because they settled in swampland. Swampland is not too good. You know, you got insects, you got disease, you got standing water, you got impure drinking water, all right? And you couldn't grow anything in a swamp. And these colonists, they did not have skills to hunt, fish, and all those kind of things. Because you got to think about it. They're coming from basically what they know as civilization and to the brink of being kind of reverting back to your hunter and gathering days, which humans have been removed from that for thousands of years at this point. Some of them. So in Europe, they didn't hunt and fish for survival. Now, and another thing they had Native American attacks. Now, you have to think about this. The way that it is made, that the colonists were these innocent people and all this kind of stuff, but actually it was kind of like both hands. It was like both ways. You know, Native Americans are not, most Native Americans are not people that try to attack. Some of these people don't have to deal with the violence, but the colonists also had made sure that they could stand their ground and try to establish their respect. So it was kind of both ways. It was like they were attacking each other. It was attacks and counterattacks all throughout this point. Anyway, let's keep moving. So the negative relationships that they had built with the natives, it harmed trade. So therefore they couldn't get any money. They couldn't get the goods they need. Instead of actually going to hunt and fish, they could have gotten that from the Native Americans. But the relationship wasn't as good. So let's keep moving. Now, here's one thing that you got to think about. Had a guy named John Smith. He was the very first leader of Jamestown. He told the colonists, pretty simple, you don't work, you don't eat. Simple as that. Everybody's got to put in some work to survive. Now, he made a friendly relationship with the Native Americans and helped the colonists to survive. He knew, now you have to ask yourself the question, did he really like the natives? Who knows? He probably didn't, but he knew that that was the key to survival. So that's why he struck a chord with these natives. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of him. Disney, I have a picture from Disney, what was that, Pocahontas? And then I had a real picture of him, okay? So, now, here's how he looked through the Disney version, and this is what he really looked like. Now, I don't know about you. I don't judge guys, but I think we know who's what in that picture. I like the beard, though, man. Look at that beard. Yep, like Ross. Oh, I'm kidding. Anyway, so we're going to go to, now, Pocahontas is a different one. Now, I also did a comparison with her as well, with the Disney version and a real painting. And this is Pocahontas. Now, I don't know about you, but the one to the left looks nothing like the one to the right. You be the judge of that. All right, anyway, let's go on to the next slide. Next thing. Now, tobacco. Tobacco was introduced by a man named John Rolfe. Now, we need to remember that name. John Rolfe introduced tobacco to the colonies, and he brought it illegally from the Caribbean. Now, I don't understand who was governing all this, so I don't understand why it will be legal and illegal, because at this point, they were just colonies. They didn't really have a set of laws yet, totally. So I don't know how they would regulate having something brought over illegally. But Jamestown took it, and they used it as a cash crop. And what happened as they got tobacco to Europe, then it actually started the habit of smoking and chewing tobacco and things like that. So that really upped the price of tobacco, and it made Jamestown a pretty wealthy colony considering. Now, when you get money, it grows. Jamestown grew tremendously based off the money of selling tobacco as a cash crop. And more people were coming over to Jamestown for opportunity, economic opportunity. And then you had people that were coming over, they were in the form of indentured servants, and we know what indentured servants were. They were people who would pay for passage to the New World for food, clothing, and shelter by working off their debt. Usually it took about 5 to 7 year commitment. So it's just like I said earlier, it's like if you say, all right, I'm going to take out a loan from the bank for $100,000, then you just work to pay that debt off instead of actually paying it off monetarily. Next, apprentices. Now this is pretty important because apprentices was very vital to the colonies, because once you brought a certain number of people over, you still wanted that population to replenish as far as the craft. Because like I said, you had silversmiths, blacksmiths, painters, so everybody filled a role in the colony. And you wanted to keep that role alive. Just like anything else, they had to have incentives to do things like that. So they would designate young men and women to work as apprentices. And those apprentices ended up actually taking over when that person retired or had died off. Now, colonial government. Now, these words are words that we have to look at. The House of Burgesses, that's one of your essential words. The House of Burgesses was elected officials that will meet and make laws for the colony. Okay, this was the first representative government in American colonies. And this was made that push toward what we know as democracy today. Okay? Burgesses was elected representatives. That's all it was. So the House of Burgesses was pretty much like the House of Representatives or the Senate. That's basically what it was like. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get off of this. And you probably, at this point, had watched a couple things and got a little bit of extra information about the colonial era. And don't forget Jamestown. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little bit of question and answering. Q&A as it's called. And get that information out, because that will be on your quiz later on this week. If you have any questions, like I always say, ask. Ask the questions. At this point, the quiz should be pretty much taken care of, and we'll go from there.